Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Hot Flashes and Cool Chats. So, as you know, I started these conversations because through my work as a midlife concierge and my community of mamas in menopause, that I am meeting so many amazing people, men, women who are just so passionate about this space that I am supporting women in midlife. And so this chat series is a way for me to introduce you to who they are so you can hear their stories, you can get to know them personally, and you can learn about what their products, their services, and see how they can be a resource for you during the season. We're all figuring it out, but let's just see if we can make it a little bit easier, a little bit brighter, and more empowering. So, with that, I've got a guest today, and Tony, you and I have become fast friends. We've been hanging out a little bit. We were introduced, we'll keep throwing out Julie Pinkerton's name. She's great, she's the ultimate connector. And so, we've spoken, we've chatted, we've been on each other's podcasts, and this is kind of a take two on my podcast or my chat series, I like to say, for you, because the first time I was doing it on Facebook Live. And we had all this technical glitches. And like I was joking earlier, your head was completely cut off. I think we saw, half your face. So we're doing a redo because we really want to hear what you have to say and see you at the same time. So so, with all that, Tony, who he is, he's a nationally recognized financial fluency advocate. He's an author. He's a podcaster himself. I've been on his podcast, and he is passionate about empowering people taking charge of their money, making financial literacy very approachable, practical, and as you say, even more enjoyable. So let's see. Tell us, Tony, who are you? How did you get here? And tell us how you support women in midlife.
Well, Meredith, isn't that the question we always all ask ourselves? How did I get here? Who am I and
How
how
did
did
I
I get
get
here?
here?
Especially as we get older. Um, you know, a little bit about my journey is I started off quite a few years ago as an insurance agent. I quickly became a fee-based insurance consultant. And what that allowed me to do over the next few decades was work with other financial advisors, trust officers, attorneys, financial planners, and really get to see what was going on behind the scenes of other salespeople. So I started to see that people didn't really understand the insurance products they were buying, but also people who were selling them didn't really understand the insurance products that they were selling, and the insurance companies didn't really understand the products that they were selling to people. So, that got me really interested in the educational component, which is where I started doing some writing. I've done some consumer advocacy work, but it really got me thinking about, okay, that there's more to this than just the products, that it's really about the people. And that's where I am today.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. I think oftentimes with anything, we have apps on our phones or any, we're just click, click, click. Yes, we go through these contracts like, they're written for us instead of probably against us. But, it's good to know the words, the information. And like you're saying, there's oftentimes we get into this insurance world as agents, myself, I know, and you're almost taught to run before you even taught to walk. And so I love that you are able to support agents and advisors, I take it in general, with just really taking that step back, knowing that this product is valuable and why it's there in the first place. So I love that. That makes me super happy that you're taking that approach. For women in particular in midlife, I think that we thought we were doing everything right. I know for me, I'm in my 50s, and when we're in our 20s and our 30s, and maybe even our 40s, we get a job, we're working for a corporation, and we get our 401k package and our benefits department is our quote unquote financial advisor, you know. Tell us a little bit about why what we did wrong with that, especially now in our stage of life that we're realizing maybe we should have done something a little bit different.
Well, I would say, first of all, you didn't do anything wrong. Is you made the best choice that you could at the time that you made the choice with the information that you had at the time. The
Mm.
challenge is that pretty much none of us were taught about personal finance, financial products, how to work with money when we were in school. That's a basic life skill. And that's more something we could talk about. Okay, maybe that's a failure of the education system. We could say the education system failed, but I would say that none of us failed because how would we even know? So, what I'm really trying to do is help people understand the right questions to ask.
Mm.
I've spent a lot of time with best practices, talking about scams, frauds, financial predators, and the best protection in those situations are being able to ask better questions. And so we look back and we go, okay, was that the right decision? No. But did we have the information to make a better decision? No. Did we even know what questions to ask at the time? We didn't. And as you point out, we were expecting the company's HR person to help us out, but the HR person, they don't understand the financial services and products. Their job is to help with the hiring, the firing, putting in the employee benefits, compensation, the whole thing. So it's like expecting them to be specialists is an unrealistic expectation on an HR person. However, as a new employee, when you're 20 years old, you don't know that.
Yeah,
This person
exactly.
seems like they know, but they don't.
Yeah. And I think as you get older and wiser, and maybe even I think the younger generations are a little bit, just a little bit more knowledgeable, maybe than for me personally, that everyone has a different lane. And you talk a lot about having a dream team. And I love that so much because who you go to for financial professionals in general, it's an umbrella. It's not just one person. An advisor is not your only financial professional you should have on your team. Can you talk a little bit about maybe who are some of the professionals that should be on your team?
Well, so I did do a podcast episode with Julie Pinkerton, who we mentioned about
Yes.
building your financial dream team. So really, it depends upon your needs. So not to take a cop out, but you may need an estate planning attorney, somebody to help you draft your will, trust, powers of attorney, those types of documents. You probably need at least one insurance agent because most insurance agents can't cover all types of insurance. You may have your auto insurance, homeowners insurance, health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance. I could probably do that faster if you would like.
I
And
know.
you might need a CPA, you might need an investment advisor, but really you're really looking for people who are going to help you and to understand who you are. And I have an interesting anecdote. So my wife and I have our investments with a very large, well-known, I'm just going to call them out by name because I was just incredulous at this response they got. I ran a little test on them yesterday. So we have an account with Schwab. So we were
Mhm.
told that we get access to a financial consultant. So I go, okay, I'd like to set up a call with my financial consultant. How would you like your financial consultant to contact you? I said, I would like do you want them, mm, you know, email, text, phone? And I was
Yeah.
very specific. I go, tell them I would like them to contact me by email. So, of
Mhm.
course, what was the first thing that that person did?
Called
They
you.
con they called me. So
Yeah.
guess what that does in my mind? I'm like, well, how do I expect them? How can I trust them to handle my money if they can't even follow a simple instruction on how to
Mm.
contact me? So my advice to people who are out there listening and watching to this is, run simple little tests like that on your advisor. See if they can follow simple little requests. See if you like them. You
Mm.
should like your advisor if you feel uncomfortable, if your advisor makes you feel uncomfortable, if you feel judged by your advisor, any of those things, it's
Mm.
your money. It's
Yeah.
your financial service product. So go find somebody who you think is going to be the best person to help you.
Yeah, be in alignment. We talk about that a lot as women in midlife, that maybe what served us, when we were younger is not serving us now. And it doesn't mean that that person did anything wrong. Maybe they did email and instead of call and they followed everything to my T, but maybe my T changed. Maybe I used to want to be called and maybe now that I'm in my 50s, now I don't want to be called anymore. So it is really interesting because it's not just, that advisor, but it's we're changing. And so we have to listen to ourselves and make pivots where it makes the most sense. I think a lot of times we just use maybe advisors that our parents used. And so we're using the same person. And maybe that person is now ready to retire and maybe it just doesn't fit right. Maybe our kids now are needing some financial planning. Does it make sense to align our 20-year-old child with maybe a 70-year-old, man, most likely? Maybe not. So I think you're right, just listening to yourself and being honest with where you're aligned and how that professional and you can really get to your goals, your current goals, in just the best way. I know you do a podcast as well, a little bit about this. So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Well, so my podcast is going through a name change. It's currently called the Get Ready Money Podcast. It's going to be changing to the Before Life Happens podcast. And I really want to help people be prepared for life's what ifs. But, I'm
Mm,
doing it with a range of diverse guests who are really passionate about changing the way we think about money and using money as a force for good. People
mm,
like you who are really passionate about making a positive difference in people's lives is because we go through these things where some of our financial advisors, we may not feel seen or heard. And I think that this is really pertinent for your audience is because a lot of women in midlife go through a transition. Either they become a widow or they get divorced.
mm.
And they change to a new financial planner because they don't feel seen or heard
Mm.
by their couple's financial
Yeah,
planner. So as you point out, is like that's what I'm really trying to help out is, I try to have on a lot of female guests. I try to have on a lot of guests from different diversities, cultures, different
mhm,
things to reflect that we need to find people who resonate with us. And for me, that's what I try to do on the podcast is have on a very diverse group of people so that hopefully somebody listening to the podcast will go, ooh, this person gets me. I'm on the
yeah,
same wavelength as this person. So that's what I'm really trying to do on the podcast is to help people find people who resonate with them. And that's the mission of the podcast.
yeah,
And if I can go back real quickly to the prior question,
yeah,
about the example with the phone number is the reason why this actually goes back to Van Halen. And
mm,
so we're all the same generation, probably most of the people listening, when Van Halen was the biggest thing around. And there were the stories about how they were really picky about M&Ms and they didn't want any brown M&Ms. You've heard
yeah,
that
it
story,
was,
right?
yeah,
Well, I read an interview later on with Eddie Van Halen. There was a purpose to that question. He said
mm,
if they couldn't be detailed enough to pick out the brown M&Ms like we had specified in our contract, how was I going to trust them with the electrical equipment on
mm,
stage? And
mm,
that gets to what I was saying about the email versus texting. I want this person to manage my money if they're not able to, follow a very simple instruction on emailing or texting.
mm,
So it's that type of thing is that, I'm trying to do with my podcast, but with all of my stuff is that, you can have expectations and you can find people who resonate with you and who will do the job you need them to do.
yeah, yeah. So going back to that story, so it's not that someone's a diva. It just means that they want some detail. And I will point out too that it's okay to be honest with your advisor as well and say, I've changed. Can we get into alignment? And if it doesn't mean you have to, I guess what I'm trying to say, if you've been with someone, an advisor for years or even 1 year, have an honest conversation and just make sure you guys are on the same page. Maybe that advisor doesn't know and maybe you came across thinking you needed something, you had certain expectations, and maybe you've changed and you just need to let that advisor know. It doesn't mean I don't want people to think like, oh my gosh, these two people are talking about cutting off your advisors. None of that. It just means be in alignment. So whether it is have a conversation, have an open, honest conversation with yourself, with your professional, whoever it happens to be. It doesn't just have to be a financial advisor. And just make sure that you're always on the same page. I think that is so important, especially for women in midlife, because I think women feel a little bit or had felt in the past a little bit insecure, like you're saying, maybe hadn't been seen or heard in the past. I think times are changing, though. I think women are really feeling more empowered to ask questions and not feel like they're making decisions because somebody else thinks it's the best thing for them. So come on, ladies, we're doing it. This is what all this conversation is. The more we talk, the more we learn, which I think is so impactful and so important. And I'm so grateful for what you're doing because you're helping. You're helping men, women, all of us just have a little bit more information so we can make the best decisions for ourselves. So I love that.
Yeah, well, thanks. And that's really what it's about. It's about asking questions and holding people responsible. If we're for most people listen to this, if you're in midlife, you've been a parent. You have
Mm,
expectations of your kids. So it's okay to have those expectations of your advisors that you don't owe
mm,
them anything. So yeah, yeah. So to be clear, I'm not saying get rid of your advisor, fire your
yeah,
advisor, but I'm also saying is that they are your advisor and
yeah.
that it's like if you go to a restaurant and you don't like the food they're serving or the service there, then you
Mhm.
don't need to go that. You go to a restaurant. But if you're perfectly happy with the restaurant, you're going to keep going back. So it's the same thing. And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing I hear from women is that when they leave a financial services firm, they almost always go to a financial services firm that's run by a woman.
Mm,
And so that's something to think about is, as you keep talking about being aligned with your goals and your values. And I think that's very important is
yeah.
that your advisor should be aligned with your goals and your values. And where you are, as you point out very well, is where you are in life. At midlife, it's a time of reflection. Is I just noticed somebody today who posted that she was turning 34 and the wisdom and how much more she had to learn, and the lessons from her mother. And
Mm.
so I go, boy, I wish I could be 34 again. And, but I can't be. But it does give you a whole different perspective being in midlife. But it is a time where you reflect
Mm.
and you think about what are your choices going forward.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of life stuff happening to your own self, but also the world around you, your parents, your kids. And I talked about that a lot, being pulled in those different directions. And it really does open your eyes to, okay, am I doing what I'm doing now? Is it fulfilling me? Because I want to have a nice, healthy, long life, and I don't want it to feel like just stuck in a way. So, yeah, it is a time of reflection and we're getting wiser as women. So, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me, but I want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you. So, before we wrap up or anything, and I'll put in the notes as well, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? Know about your podcast. I know there'll be some changes, so we could always update that too. Maybe we'll have you on again when you relaunch that, and maybe I'll be a guest on yours. But what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, so my website is probably the best place to find me,
Okay,
tonysteuer.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. Uh, the name of the podcast right now is the Get Ready Money Podcast. And so it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all the major podcast platforms. So feel
nice.
free to reach out. And I'm going to be
Yeah,
offering insurance clarity sessions. So if you have questions about your insurance and you want to just get a non-biased opinion, you'll be able to just reach out and get in touch with me.
I love that. That is so helpful. People just need to know what they signed 5 years ago, 20 years ago, so that way when it's needed, they know what to expect. That's fantastic. Well, thank you again. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for continuing to watch and sign on to our hot flashes and cool chats. This has been really fun for me, and I'm so grateful that everyone is willing to share their time. I'm so thankful for your expertise, Tony, your wisdom, and just finding different ways that we can connect with people and be very creative. Times are changing, and we need to change with everybody. So, with that being said, I want to thank you, everyone. And until next time, remember you are not alone on this midlife journey. We're doing it together, men and women. We're here for support. And here's some more hot flashes, cool chats, and to a lot more meaningful conversations. Until next time, bye.